Avenue. Roll again.
Las Vegas. I really hate this place. I always have. To me, it's capitalism at its worst. A city built out in the middle of a desert with one specific goal: to empty your bank accounts. There was a time when this place was run by the mafia and appropriately dubbed Sin City. It seems like everybody in the world knows about it, and they all want to come here and live that experience that's sold to us. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. For me, what that usually means is what I take with me to Vegas for money stays in Vegas. Are you a lucky person? Well, come hit it big in the casinos. Hey, are you unhappy with your sex life? Well, come be with as many women as you can afford. Want free drinks in a first-class room? Well, if you play your cards right, you can live like a king. Well, that's what they say, right? Maybe that's how it used to be. And maybe, if you didn't pay your bills back then, there was a hole already dug for you in the desert. But these days, it's a giant shopping mall. Gangsters have been replaced by corporations. The high-class casino experience has been replaced with flip-flops, 5-cent beers, and an all-you-can-eat breakfast buffet. I mean, there's a giant CVS pharmacy on the fucking strip right now. I am not kidding. I will say this about the city. It's glorious for people watching. I highly suggest that if you come to this city, then just travel around in Ubers and Lyfts. Talk with all the drivers, and you're going to learn a lot about the citizens. I mean, they're a wild bunch of transients with crazy stories about how they got here. I mean, they all have healthy gambling addictions and completely deny it. And they have such a strong love for this place that they call home. There was one thing in common with every local that I talked to. They all believed in luck. A higher power that would eventually do right by them. And if they just stuck it out to the end, they'd win big. I mean, it started to sound like the movie business, right? I'm always betting big on my ideas, putting all my chips on my latest project with the hope that someday it's going to pay off. But unlike gambling, with the filmmaking process, you eventually beat the house. In my opinion, you're rewarded with these amazing life experiences. I mean, you get to work all the time, you get to travel all the time, and you get to meet these amazing people. That brings me to why I'm in this ridiculous city. I've traveled here with Dave and my buddy Tony Fernandez to visit NAB. NAB is a giant film and TV broadcast convention showcasing all the latest and greatest in camera equipment, editing equipment, and sound equipment. And it all takes place in this colossal building filled with salesmen trying to get you to buy the stuff before it becomes obsolete. I didn't come here to buy stuff. I came here to see friends. In this episode, I sit down with my old pal, Rod Clark. Years ago, Rod gave me my very first sponsorship and has continued to support all my work and the stuff we do here at McFarland and Pesci. Join me as I talk to Rod about sponsorships and how he chooses the artists that he wants to support. We tackle why he turned away from a life as a freelancer for a career in sales. It's all about addressing the elephant in the room. How can I make a living as a for-hire artist? And if you decide to take that 9-to-5 salary position, how can you contribute creatively to the filmmaking community? This is a good one, guys. Sit back and enjoy the new episode of In Love with the Process. Good morning, everybody. Today's episode of In Love with the Process is a special one. We're actually out here in Las Vegas for NAB. And traveling with me is Dave, and he is shooting. Sorry to talk over you, Dave. You're not that important. No. He's shooting video for us and getting all sorts of content together. And Dave has just turned 21. So, of course, we have to take him to Las Vegas. I am outing you to the world, my friend.
What other way to celebrate?
Yes. Also traveling with my longtime companion and my brother from another mother, Mr. Tony Fernandez.
Hello.
Tony has been with me for how long now?
Almost 10 years, actually, yeah.
We have been on many adventures.
Yeah, a lot of adventures.
A lot of it had you peening people for a while. Do you
Yeah.
remember? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we did a lot of music video work together, and we're also hetero life mates at this point.
Yeah, it's been a lot of hours worked and a lot of beers drank, so it's not bad.
Awesome.
No complaints.
All right, and I have two special guests with us today as we're here in Vegas. One of the cool parts about coming to NAB is you can look at a lot of gear, you can look at a lot of cool new toys, and mostly the show is pretty much like a salesman show. They try to sell you all this product.
Yeah.
And I'm really not in the market to buy a lot of products right now, but I'd like to come out here to meet with friends because we have friends all over the country, and everybody sort of like collects at this conference. And it is in Vegas, so we get to go out and have some fun and drink some beers. So, two friends, old friend, new friend today. Introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Rod Clark, and I am the founder of a filter company called Wine Country Camera. But I've been part of the filmmaking industry for a lot of years, typically with gear development and marketing.
You make that sound really boring, Rod.
Oh, thank you very much.
Rod's actually a really cool dude and one of the first guys to ever give me a sponsorship, if you remember correctly.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, I was really excited when you rang me up. I was with Teradek at the time, and you had a project that was I think it was the first time you were doing, it was a helmet cam with live operating, and we had just come out with a Cube video encoder at the time. And so we sort of had just developed a piece of gear that allowed you to do what you wanted to do.
Yep.
And I loved the aesthetic of your work tremendously. The stuff that you and Ian do together, I think, is incredible. And so I was really happy to support it. Most people that call me out of the blue and need stuff, I just tell them to go suck eggs. But I was really, really, really excited about working on the project.
And for the people at home that can't see the video, as Rod was saying, that both of our faces are getting closer and closer to each other. There's potentially a kiss that was going to happen in there. But last minute we didn't do it because we're friends. And I have a girlfriend home, so.
That's right, yeah. It's not purely a love fest, folks.
Yeah, okay. And then introduce yourself.
I'm Robert Buchanan. I'm a full-time father and a full-time husband with a full-time job as a broadcast engineer and a healthy passion for filmmaking. And I've been doing this since the DSLR craze took place and haven't been able to let go of it. It's just, there's a part of me that just has to be creative, loves being creative, and it's my outlet. And been trying to make it more of it than just an outlet and turn it into a functioning business. And it's cool to actually see that happen. And that has been happening over the last few years, and just nice to be in a place where you can take the technology and the things that you love and turn them into a business and be successful with it.
That's awesome, man. I think everybody around this table is kind of in the same position, you know? And I think most of our friends are trying to do the same thing, trying to survive. And it's cool that you're out. Now, did you say how long you've been doing this? How long have you been doing it for?
About 2010. Yeah, is when I really got the itch for filmmaking. I started off with like music production and made beats and, you know, for hip hop and R&B stuff. But that seemed to not really pay off in the long run. So cameras just, you know, you point a camera at something and you capture something that's there and you create an image that's there. With music, you're giving birth to something from the very beginning. You know, there's nothing there. It's just purely out of you, you know. So I don't know, filmmaking just seemed like something that was a little bit more realistic for someone who had a full life already, you know, to try to get into, to have a creative outlet. And I'm just stuck with it since.
So you're in like what, 7 years at this point?
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
So and you're starting to see like the benefits of being in this long at this point?
Yeah, I'm starting to see the benefits, but at the same time, you know, when you're working 40 hours a week, it's very challenging. It's very challenging to, you know, try to make something happen outside of those 40 hours. You know, but yeah, I am seeing some turnaround, and, you know, me and Rod, good buddies. He's looking out for me.
Yeah, but we've been doing projects together for a long time, and kind of in the beginning it was, Rob was like the behind the scenes guy. It was like we'd be working with somebody who's, somebody like August Bradley, who's a Hasselblad Master awarded photographer, and he's a cinematographer and a director, and we were working on projects with him, and it was like, okay, we're gonna grab Rob and he's gonna do our behind the scenes, and then like the behind the scenes would turn out like as good as the project. Right? Like, I'm not even kidding you. And so now it's gotten to the point where I've started my company, and I want to produce a full-time series, and I'm going like, all right, Rob, like we're gonna do this together, like you and me. We're gonna produce and develop this entire series together. And yeah, he's just my creative partner on the West Coast. I mean, it's really great.
And it's really cool because Rod bringing me behind the scenes on stuff like that, I was able to see how the big boys, do it and see how the workflow goes. And, it's a constant learning process. Don't ever think that you're going to be done learning if you're a filmmaker. There's always something new, and there's always something to get caught up on.
The key is learning how to tell your wife that you bought a new camera. I mean, really, that's what it is.
This is the last one, I swear.
Where have you been?
Yeah.
It's like a box in the trunk of the car.
Yeah.
I was on with another woman, I swear.
I know that's
Yeah,
not right.
exactly. There's a big dent in his couch where he sleeps,
Holding the camera at night.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the thing about that though is, honestly, the technology just keeps getting better and better. And, I think I bought a FS700 and I was like, oh, that's it. Got that in the Odyssey, and, it's just that's it. This is all the camera gear I'll ever need. And then Red says, hey, we've got cameras for under $10,000 now. And you're like, oh, damn.
Yeah, right.
What now?
Well, that's really cool, man, and it's really cool that you were able to get closer to Rod that way and sort of progress your career by learning and actually being on a set, being on a location, seeing how other people work. I think a lot of people may look down on those positions. I talk to folks all the time that are like, I don't want to be a PA, or like, I really don't want to show up for free and help people out. But it really is a great opportunity for you to learn 10 times the amount you would ever learn in a film school. Because you get to not only see it in practice, but you also get to understand the politics involved behind a set. You get to understand, how to become a reliable human being. You know what I mean? And then within the constraints of the production itself, you can figure out how to be creative with what you have. And then I feel like all those skills are the things that you end up falling back on as you get work. So it's really cool that you guys have been able to do that. And I want to make sure that we're not all talking about, I know we're all gear nerds, but I don't want to talk about gear for this whole episode. I think I'm really excited to have Tony on for the first time because we've been doing stuff for ages. Mm-hmm. And how did you get started in this business?
Oh, God. I was living in Florida. I was like 22, 23, not really happy with what I was doing. I was working at an auto plant. I was making car parts. And on weekends, I was in the independent wrestling business as a ring crew member. Yes. So I would build rings, and then I started doing some camera work with that. And it's not difficult camera work. You just follow the action in the ring and try not to trip and fall.
Try not to show the fake hits?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's nothing you can do about it, It was a lot of fun, though. I like some of the best times I've ever had doing that kind of stuff. Met some great people. But, it's not really where I wanted to end up. I didn't see myself doing that professionally. I don't have, the body for that, I also didn't
You've got a wrestler's body.
I didn't have, the time and the commitment to, actually train. That's a lot of work. That's, you commit your entire life to that. And was more into, the storytelling aspect. So I met a mutual friend of ours, Aaron Taberski, who at the time was a Grip Electric. I think he's now a rigging electric over in the local union up here in Boston. And he was like, "Yeah, I need hands on set," because I was up in town visiting. And I was like, "Yeah, that's interesting." I ended up moving up to Boston from Florida because I was sick of Florida, and I just kind of happened to be on one of your productions, your music video for Meshuggah's Bleed. And that was like my first experience ever on a set. Never went to film school, never touched a piece of equipment before, and just kind of walked in like, you want me to move all these things here and there and not, fuck anything up.
The funny thing is I don't even remember you on that set.
That was,
Wow.
I thought that
You made quite an impression.
you kind of did the job of a PA, is you're supposed to be like invisible and just be busy. So
Mike had you filling the sandbags with sand.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of the worst set that I have ever run. Like, honestly, and Ian and I were co-directing that, and we were going through a lot of miserable stuff on that shoot. And I'm ashamed to say that I actually lost my cool on that shoot badly, and I learned some hard lessons. Being a young and dumb and arrogant filmmaker, I really learned some hard lessons about how not to show emotions in front of people.
yeah, because if you're stressed out, the entire crew
You just
and
see it
talent
happen.
and talent gets stressed out, which is even worse.
Yeah.
Because the crew, they have their own stresses. Everybody's got to get shit done. But once the on talent, like the on camera talent's like feeding off your bullshit, that's kind of a bad.
Yeah.
I thought that everything was normal. It was my first time on set. I was like, cool, everybody's fucking high strung and everybody's like just drinking coffee and getting mad.
And I'm just throwing chairs in the back. Like,
Yeah,
I was so upset that day. But I mean, like, it was one of the cool things about, like you were saying before, you're always learning on this stuff. And as I made the transition from being like just a shooter and just a DP or a photographer to being a director, you start to understand that it's about human communication, and it's about really understanding what's happening on set. And more often than not, like when I was doing 12cam, most of my mornings consisted of me just walking through and checking in with people and going, how was your night? How'd you sleep? What's going on? How's life? Oh, you got this real stressful thing going on? Sure, let's figure out how to take care of that. Because your movie, your material is reliant upon all of these tools, all these human beings to be at their best. And so when I was younger, I was so concerned with like the perfect shit that I had come up with in my head. Like the frame's gotta be perfect and the pieces have to be perfect. And it's always this battle. And you hear a lot of directors talk about production being this fight, because you have this vision when you put it together in the conceptual stage, and then it never really lives up to that. And so there's a lot of directors that just really fight this. And they feel like everything's out to get them, and they feel like the process is being an asshole to get to that point. Yeah. And through trial and error with myself, I really came to realize that I need to embrace the fact that shit's gonna change. I need to embrace the fact that it's all gonna be very fluid, have a plan, so that way when everybody turns to you with that look in their eyes, like, what the fuck are we doing? I can go, okay, let's go to the board and let's take a look at what the plan is. But you also know when you go, guys, that's not working. Let's all chill out and let's do something really fun.
It's easy to forget that it's supposed to be fun and it's supposed to be your passion.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to have a goal in mind.
Yeah.
And if there's something that's in your way for that goal, it's usually yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's
adapt to what's going
so.
on.
I started in the movie industry actually when I was 11 years old, because my dad is like this big time Hollywood gaffer, So my first job was like put sandbags on C-stands, and then it was like, okay, you can learn how to do a little bit of lighting. You can learn how. So I went from being a very young person through my teenage years and my early 20s doing lighting and assistant camera work. And it's interesting now, I look back then and I think because I grew up in the industry, I had like probably this colossal ego for a young person, and may or may not have been justified with talent or knowledge, right? But I look back and I think, yeah, I'll bet. How did I get away with acting like that as a young person? Because honestly, if you look back, you realize, you know what? I didn't know shit. I really didn't. I mean, I thought I did, but there's, as you were saying, there's so much more of the human element. And I guess that's the interesting thing about being a creative. You have to have confidence in what you can do. You have to have a bit of bravado to be able to say, all right, you know what? I'm going to pull this all together and make it happen.
If you want people to follow you,
I'm going to fucking make this happen, right? But then the other side is you got to realize, oh, well, it's not about me making this happen. It's about us making this happen.
Yeah.
And now I'm sort of middle-aged now. I'm 43 now, and I look at these projects completely differently. I don't look at it as I have an idea and I'm going to do this, and why aren't you people pulling your weight? It's okay, I have an idea. Who can I find that has the talent and the passion for me to be a great partner with them? And if I'm lucky, I can help facilitate that creativity in somebody, right? And yes, we want to get to the end of the project, but it's a selfless thing, right? It's the focus is on the project itself.
Well, yeah, and completely agree with you on all of that stuff. And I feel like we're transitioning into the right mode here, which is, as I approach middle age myself, I'm sort of confronting it isn't about the work. Because once you complete a couple of pieces and you screen these pieces, like we've done music videos and we've done films and stuff, and we've premiered online to a huge audience. For music videos, it screens for a day or 2 days, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Like it's gone. It just gets lost in this sea of content. And then if we work really hard to do a movie, I may do a screening, or we may do a couple of different screenings for it, and we're the superstars for that night. You're there and everybody's like, this is amazing, this is wonderful, and then it's gone. It just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So that can't be the reason why we do these things. And as we get older and we go through this process, and Tony and I have done a lot of this, which is the adventure within, like the adventure within a project. And the ultimate goal is to be, honestly, it's to be making enough money so that we can continue to somehow work in this field.
So you don't have to have a real job.
We don't have a real job.
Yeah.
And we get to go on these adventures. Like, oh man, like I really feel like we should go off on a tangent on this, because I think some of the adventures that we've been on have been so much fun.
Yeah, they've been wild. Not like wild, but like they've been fun, and it's good to have those too, because when you're busy working on a gig, you're wrapping out a project that you wrote or you produced, you kind of like, as you're finishing it, you're kind of thinking about what's the next thing. And I think that if you're able to have fun and live in the moment, you're kind of distracting yourself from worrying about what the next thing is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I think when you're worried about that, you're not in the moment, and you're not having a good time making the thing that you're making now.
Yeah.
And that kind of screws everything up.
Yeah.
I actually was, I worked freelance in TV commercials, movies, doing lighting assistant camera work till I was about 25.
Yeah.
And I realized that I didn't have the stomach for the freelance life. And I had seen the bottom drop out on Hollywood a couple times through watching my dad and my friends watching their careers kind of go through these ups and downs. The Canadian dollar gets super weak, and all of a sudden everything's in Toronto.
Yeah.
And people are here going, scratching their ass going, what the hell is going on? And so I sort of went a different direction from being purely a creative. And it honestly, in some ways, you could say I sort of chickened out a little bit, which is a very humbling thing to say, a very humbling thing to realize. But I think what I've done is I realized that people who have the guts to go for it, people like you, I'm going to support that community, right? So throughout the course of my career, I've been with companies like Teradek, who are creating tools for people who want to do monitoring with the new generation of digital cameras. I've worked with filters, I've worked with support gear. My philosophy throughout the entire thing has been, these are my people, this is my community. How can I make myself of value to their community? It's not, I want to sell you something and take money from you and be like, yay, I want to go, okay, how can I make something that is like truly of value to you, that you want it, you want to use it because it's going to make your process of your creativity either functional or more enjoyable or whatever. But for me as a person, I had to step back from the freelance world. I just went, don't have the stomach for it. I don't want to be losing my hair over,
You do, yeah.
you know, I don't want to be losing my hair over, you know, am I going to make a living next month?
Yep.
You know? And so I've gone down a route I've gone down a different route. And I have a huge amount of respect for people like the three of you guys who, you know, you never know when the well could dry up, you know? And as long, but, and you have to make a commitment to yourself, which is, I'm going to keep doing great work and I'm going to make it happen. So you do.
Yeah, no, completely. And with you, that philosophy rings true because let's talk about the first time we met. So when we were doing this video, we were doing a video for a band called As I Lay Dying. And we'll go off on a little story here. Basically, at the time, Ian and I were changing around how we interacted with bands. So in the last episode, I actually talked to Jesse from Killswitch, and we actually get into how hard it is to actually make a creative piece with a band because of all the roadblocks that are in between. So we cut through the fat. We actually started talking to band members. And we were on the phone with Tim, who's the lead singer from that. And talking through it with him, he wanted to do sort of this martyr, sort of Jesus death thing, which was weird. And so we were also, like, I had really kind of a bad taste in my mouth about a lot of the stuff that was going on in the music videos, so I liked the idea of murdering the lead singer from this band.
Right.
And so we came up with this concept where the band gets hijacked and kidnapped by a bunch of, you know, rebels, quote unquote rebels.
Bad guys.
And they take them out to the middle of the desert and they execute them in the desert. That's the whole concept for the video. Simple enough, right? But we had to shoot in California. Ian and I live in Boston. We don't live in California. You know, so dealing with gear, dealing with all that stuff gets really complicated. And we had a very tight budget, as you do with music videos. So we designed this whole concept really around the budget constraints and knowing how we were going to have a lot of locations and we had to try to make it really interesting. So we decided that we were going to do a first-person video. And this is before GoPros. So this is early DSLR.
It was like that year before GoPro really took off.
Right.
'Cause they were around, but
They were probably standard def, look like shit.
They weren't, I think they were doing up to 720, but they couldn't do anything lower than 60 frames per second.
Yeah.
So we're like, that's out of the ballpark.
And it looked like crap. And no one saw it as professional. They hadn't done their marketing campaign.
Not
That
yet.
was like
Well, the early GoPros were crap.
yeah.
For sure.
So we had to get a DSLR mounted to the front of somebody, and we had our buddy.
Nate Ball.
Was it Nate? Yeah, Nate built us this helmet rig, which was super heavy. It was like a motorcycle helmet, and it had a
Weights on the
counterweight balance on the back of
Right.
it, and a tray that came out in front of your face, and then you could put the camera in front of your face. And we needed to be able to get video preview.
Yeah.
And I was doing the research online, and at the time it was just radio signal stuff. So like that poor camera person, on top of wearing all this weight on their head, would also have to wear like a huge battery pack and like a transmitter and all that shit. And I was like, this is too much. And we also had to fly all that out and ship it out. The weight was just too much. And so I was just Google searching stuff. And I came across the transmission, like a network, small network sort of transition stuff, or transmission. And Teradek came up. And so I was like, oh, this is cool. And so I found the piece that I needed, and I'm like, okay, where can I rent it? So I was just hunting for rental houses. And there wasn't any rental houses that had it. So I was like, well, fuck it, let me just call them directly. And that's when I got you on the phone directly. And I think you tried to sell it to me initially. I think you were like, this is what we got, this is how much it costs right now. And I'm like, okay, cool. You know, where can I rent it? And I think it wasn't out yet. I think it was.
It was
still
very
a
young.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like the birth of that thing at that time. It was to the point where that was pre-iPad. We couldn't even monitor to an iPad. We had to like drag along a laptop, and it had just come out. So I think the opportunity was there
Yeah.
to do like a really good almost test piece with it.
Yeah, because I remember.
Because our video client wasn't even that solid at the time.
Yeah, and I remember being a.
That's kind of crazy how much has changed. Because that was only 6 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was 6 years ago.
6 years ago, we couldn't monitor with an iPad. There was no decent working anything like the Terror Deck at that time. And
Yeah.
there was no
it was all
small
radio.
cameras like that. It was
Yeah.
all, yeah.
It was really difficult. And then I remember we had that conversation, and you were like, okay, so it's for purchase. It really isn't for rental yet. And that's the moment where normally I'd go, okay, well, we don't have the budget for this. I'm going to hang up the phone. And I had this weird epiphany because I had never thought about sponsors. I had never thought about any of that stuff. And so when I was like, well, why don't you just give it to us? I think it was something like, why don't we just work together? And you come out, and we're going to do a music video. Where are you guys located? And you said you're located in California. I said, great, we're shooting in California. Why don't you just bring the gear, and we'll promote the fact that we're using the gear. And I really wasn't expecting anything. I was just like, yeah, sure. And I felt like I was just throwing that out there.
Shot in the dark.
It was
Yeah.
a shot in the dark. And you were super cool about it. You were like, yeah.
Well, I was Googling furiously, and I'm like, these guys are metalheads, And I'm like, I look like the business guy, but I'm like secretly a metalhead, right? Like my hair fell out, so I can't have the cool long hair anymore. Right?
You're it's
So
secret.
I was like, okay, these guys are super bitchin', man. They do like really dark, really badass stuff. Okay, yeah, I'm in.
But then it was like this roller coaster because you then were like, okay, let's do it. So we booked everything and went to go out. And then you called me back and you were like, hey, would you want a Nikon? Would you want a Nikon? Remember? And you.
Oh yeah, I was really well connected with. So I am the gear pimp.
Yes.
That is for sure.
Yes.
I've been in the business a long time, and so I have the connections at the right places where I can sort of make those sponsorships happen. And a good thing for your listeners is, if you're new to the game, don't ask for a sponsorship. Like if you have your shit together, and you are like, if you're a cut above, and you have something to bring to the party, then let's talk about it. But so I tend to plug in the right people with the other right people, right? So yeah, I think I got you guys a Nikon for that for the shoot
yep.
because they were just shooting 1080 or something at the
They
time.
were starting that transition.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I think I even connected you guys with Zacuto at one point.
Yep.
And I've flowed you guys filters from Format when I was
Oh
with
yeah,
them.
man, you've been a huge
So,
support. Yeah.
There are certain people in my sphere where I'll try and get you connected. I am the gear pimp for sure.
Gear pimp.
I am the
You
gear
are the gear
pimp. But only if it's right. It has to be a win-win for everybody. But yeah, I do remember that we shot that on Nikon.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. And were you there for the shoot? Were you there that
Oh
night?
yeah. I was operating the playback.
Do you remember? That what happened to us that night?
With the sheriffs coming in?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
And so the sheriff came and wanted to shut us down,
Yeah.
and then he was a metalhead,
Yeah.
and he was so fucking stoked. Right?
Well, we gotta explain the
we
story.
gotta back it up a little bit. I don't want to jump to the conclusion,
It
right?
wasn't just a sheriff. Like we were in the middle of the desert in like a national park, and we were in the wrong.
Yeah, we were in the wrong part
park.
of it.
But everything looks the same, so it's easy to get confused.
It's all desert.
And we've got like blank firing semi-automatic weapons. We've got guys in black masks and like flak jackets, and we've got like guys with cameras and lights. So we're like this, like you can spot us in the middle of
Yeah,
the desert because we
yeah.
have lights on everybody. And then like these 3 like trucks and jeeps and like these like
Yeah.
utility looking like
Yeah.
off-road vehicles come pouring in, and these guys hop out like,
Like, what the
what
fuck's
the
going
fuck's
on?
going on?
Well, what was going on was that Ian. So when Ian and I co-direct, we try to split duties.
Yeah.
Double-headed beast at that point. Like, well, you take care of this, I'll take care of camera, you take care of blocking. And Ian wanted to be the operator, so he basically was wearing the helmet because we needed a camera operator that could act. So he had to go through the process of hitting all the beats. And so we had this scene blocked out where the guys are kidnapped in vehicles. And we start inside the back of a van. As the van pulls up with the lead singer, the back doors open, lights shine in, and they pull this guy out, and they pull the camera operator out. And as you get out, there are 2 other vehicles, and all the rest of the band guys are getting sort of like herded into a spot. It's like this one-take flashlight sort of lit thing. And I'm sitting over the hill or wherever with the monitor, and just watching it as it happens. And so we had done like a couple of takes, and it was getting there, and with anything, you're just sort of finding it, and everybody's sort of finding their pacing. And we started this last take, and it was perfect. like inside the van, like the lead singer wasn't acting like he was being real. So
Yeah.
it's like that was cool. The doors open and the flashlights flare at the perfect point. And like as they open the door, like the other truck roars over the hill, comes to a stop. And then like another truck roars over the hill, comes to stop, and dudes are pointing guns and guys are getting pulled out. And then there's another truck that roars over the hill. And I'm watching this on this TV by myself and go, whoa, this is really cool. Because there's like all this stuff happening.
Yeah.
That other truck roars over and this dude jumps out in full gear.
Yeah.
Like flak jacket, like AR-15s,
Yeah.
like the whole deal. Comes like running up with the gun pointed on the entire band and our terrorists with like automatic weapons. And you just see Ian's hands in front of the camera lens going, oh my God, don't shoot us, don't shoot us, don't shoot us. And everybody falls to the ground with their hands up. It was the most exciting moment. And I'm over the hill laughing my ass off, staring at this monitor.
And if I remember correctly, we were permitted, but just permitted like a mile away or something,
Yes.
and we were just like, we're in the middle of fucking desert. We're just gonna pull over here, right? We thought it was the right pullout, but it was like the next pullout or
Yeah,
something.
it was close enough.
It was close enough. We're like, all right, it's Anza-Brega. We're in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
And apparently the memo didn't reach these guys, right? Yeah, so they came in hot, man. They came in hot. It was quite a surprise.
Yeah, and yeah, they were like, "What's going on here?" We're like, "Well, we're shooting a music video. We're permitted." And then they're like, "What band is it?" And we're like, "That's a metal band." They're like, "What metal band?" And we're like, as I lay down, they're like, "Oh yeah, I know them." And they all got like super excited and just dropped their shit. And they were like, "Can we get pictures?" And they were hanging out with the band. And
Well, remember like
taking
when he went
photos
back
and
to his
video.
car, he had Pantera
He
playing.
started playing Pantera.
Yeah, and we're like, oh, rad! Like this guy's
So
rad.
lucky.
Yeah.
Because there was like two guys that worked in the office and it could have been like that 50-year-old dude that's
Yeah.
like, you know, pissed that he had to get out from in front of whatever TV he's sitting at all night.
But the Pantera guy came and
Yeah.
saved our asses.
So lucky. And that is not the only time that's happened to us. We've been in multiple situations where we've encountered permitting issues or like a range, like all that sort of shit. Because you're an independent, usually skirting the line of whether or not you have your permitting.
Right.
And often we run into people that are like, remember the guy that was a friend of the Czarface or Esoteric videos that we were doing? I forget who he was.
Those were badass.
And
videos,
the
man.
guy, like random guy on the other side of the country was like, "Oh, you guys did those videos?" And we're like, "Whoa!" And he was like, "Yeah, do whatever you want." You know, it's like really kind of cool. Very lucky, fly by the seat of our pants kind of bullshit. But they make really good videos, you know, because the energy is there,
Yeah.
and there isn't sort of that, you know, big crew slowing things down, trucks kind of stuff. And I think, at least with our early music video career, a lot of that had that energy because it was that. I mean, the budgets kept it that. It's like we have to run around and do this shit, run and gun.
That was a long day. Man.
Oh, they always are.
Oh, Mia.
Always are.
God.
Yeah, they're long days.
Always are.
When we did that that first Czarface video, well, we did them both that weekend. They did one, it was just a performance piece. So it was just like cool lighting and like, you know, that kind of shit. I mean, like Inspected Deck came in. But then the second one was the next day, and that was our narrative piece. And that was like a 16-hour
Pulling your hair out.
through day.
Yeah.
They're always that, but that's what you get. I mean, like, in this business, we have, I mean, I think I direct maybe 20% of the year. You know, like the rest of the time is like prep and talking and
development.
business development.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, the amount of time that I'm actually behind a camera doing that kind of stuff is very small. But when it does happen, it's incredibly intense.
Yeah.
And it's usually just these rounds of just pummeling, like 15-hour days of craziness. And that gets back to our point where it needs to be fun.
Yeah, it's got to be fun. It's going to be intense no matter what, whether it's fun or not. Like, it should be intense. I mean, even if you do all the prep in the world that you can, it's still going to be a tight shoot.
Yeah, because there's no such thing as all the money in the world.
There's no such thing as an easy shoot either. And if it is easy, something's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And the times that we've had easy shoots, it has been
We've
wrong.
been missing something.
Yeah.
And yeah, we overlooked something, didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's continue talking a bit about adventures. So let's get off all this stuff because we've been on some adventures because you've hooked up with us quite a few times
Yeah.
as we go out to California. And one thing that we have done on this trip as well, and we've been exposing Dave to some of our stuff. one of the tasks that you had when we first started working together was anywhere that we went, Tony's job was to find the shittiest bar possible, like find the best places for food. And so whenever we traveled together, that's usually your first task.
Yeah, because when you guys are throwing together a project, it's like you and Ian are working out the contracts, the relationship with the label, if it's a band, or like the production companies that we're working for, or the agencies. You guys are working that all out. Then you have the prep on the project, and you have like the script reviews and everything else. And then my job during that whole process is like research the town we're going to, find like all the cool spots.
You do a good job.
Where the good food is, where all the dive bars are, and then we usually stay like an extra day just for us.
Yeah.
Because flying back after a shoot, that sucks. You're worn down, you're tired, now you gotta travel.
Yeah.
Like, you might, it sucks. So we usually stay like 1 or 2 days extra with our own money and just like bar hop,
Yeah, we started bar safaris.
bar safaris.
I sent you guys to Cozy Car.
In San Francisco,
San Francisco.
yeah. That
Which one was
the-
Cozy Car?
That was the place that had the old converted vans. And they're like just fucking.
And the
Like-
laminated porno mags everywhere.
Laminated pornos
Playboys-
everywhere.
Playboys all
They're
over
playing
the walls,
vintage
yeah.
porn, like 1970s porn, like on the screens in the bar.
You would have loved this place, Dan.
They wouldn't have let him in. He was too young.
You would have absolutely loved this place. The place was like, because it was all old Playboy covers and spreads that they laminated the entire place with.
Then they had in the back for like their booths were like old, those old back seats out of like vans.
Yeah.
And then they had 2 converted vans. They actually took the bodies and like chopped them in half. And had booths. And then they had like TV screens everywhere, and on them they were playing like a mix up, like a good supercut of it was Happy Days. It was like monster trucks and like car crashes, and then just clips of porn.
Like hard porn.
Yeah. So it's just like, oh yeah, it's like, Monday, Tuesday, Happy Days, and then like, Bigfoot crushing a car, and then like a porn clip right afterwards.
Because we were out there with Jarvis, who is our buddy, DP, like other life mate. He's a really great guy. And that's where a lot of his slogans came from, was going to that place.
Yeah.
Right, she's getting a good one.
Look, yeah, he's on his phone texting, and he looks up at the exact moment that the porn clip's playing, and he goes like, "Oh wow, yeah, she's getting a good one." Then right back down to his phone.
The perfect representation of like a millennial at that point. I'm just on my phone. Oh yeah, like, great, yeah. Yeah. So we've been on some like really cool adventures in General Tone. Like, we actually did the bar safari thing was like a really cool thing.
That started in New York. We would go up to New York. We went to like a casting session. We were staying 2 nights up there. Was that then or no?
No. Remember, because what happened was I had made a series of grindhouse movies for a while. So I was doing work for Suicide Girls, which is a whole other conversation. But I had created this DVD, and I had booked myself on a bunch of conventions. So like we had a Comic-Con, and then we did some like Rock Shock convention.
Rock and Shock in Worcester. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had to go work a table, and I needed help, and I said to Tony, I was like, look, here's the deal. I can't pay you, but if you come, we work this table hard, we sell some merch. All of our profits.
We'll go to New York and drink.
We'll go to New York. So all the profits that we make from this weekend, we will blow in New York City.
You got a deal on a booth, and then we sold a shit ton of DVDs and T-shirts and hoodies.
Because we were hustling, because we wanted to go to New York.
Oh, yeah.
We were like pulling like 15-year-old kids over, going, "You like titties and guns?" And just selling DVDs.
We were like riding the line. We were like soliciting our junk at other DVD stands and shit. We're like, oh, you should come check out these over here. Here's a business card. Come check us out at this booth.
Yeah,
and come over and
we're pushing it
we'd like
hard.
lead them over and like get them to buy a DVD. It's terrible, but
Yeah,
it fed a full 2 days of us. It's like it covered the hotel.
because we
like,
made like $4,000.
Yeah.
We cleared like $4,000 that day, and then it was the deal. So I was like, okay, I guess we're going to New York and spending $4,000.
Right.
So we ended up going and booking a hotel in Lower East Side, and then we were there for 3 days,
Yeah, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
and we gridded it. So we canvassed the area. This is the first time we did it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can only do so much research. You know, like 5 to 8 big spots that you want to check out, and then you just kind of like hop around and you find what you find.
Yeah.
And you meet bartenders, and you're like, where do you drink?
Well, if you remember, right? So we started. You ever been on the Lower East Side?
Yes.
Yeah. So you know, and it's changed a lot these days. We started. I forget what bar we started at. We started at this spot. And the rules were 1 drink per bar, and then we can snack, because of course there's first dinner, second dinner, third dinner, fourth dinner as you continue on this adventure. So 1 drink per bar. So we go in, we have a drink at this first spot, pretty cool. Go to the second spot and meet with Ara, who's in 12 Cam, who's an actor in town. And as we're in this bar, we're explaining the rules to him at this bar, right? And we're like, okay, so 1 drink per bar, blah, blah, and here's where we're gonna go. Now, sitting at that bar, the only other guy there was this dude in like a sports jacket and like a fedora.
Yeah, he looked like Tom Waits.
And he sounded like Tom Waits,
Yeah.
remember? And he turns to us, he's like, you boys going on an adventure? Seriously. And of course, we're like, yes, we are. Yes, we're going on an adventure. And he's like, I'd like to suggest some places.
Yeah, and he was right. I forget the names of the spots, but we went to like 3 out of the 4 bars that he had recommended. Because one of them was like really busy, and we're like, fuck that, we're not going in there. We're gonna wait 10 minutes to get a drink. And
We
then,
went to the oldest bar in New York.
I forget what it's called.
It's the place that you go in and you have 2 beer options, light or dark.
Oh, nice.
And it has like troughs of like soapy water, less soapy water, clean water. So you just go click, 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 and then fill them up.
I think they actually.
Like, oof.
I think they were actually forced to shut down for a short while recently because of health code.
Yeah.
I think I heard that. Yeah, I think it's like McSorley's. I think is the name of it. I think.
Yeah. We ended up there.
But, and then we ran into him again at like the last spot he recommended. Like 2.5 hours later, we walk in and he's there. And he's like, "Hey boys," and we're like, "Holy shit!" Like, this
Yeah,
guy's
like the devil. Like he's like the devil that just shows up. He's like, I'd like to join you on the rest of your trip. And we're like, yes, please. Like this is such a weird thing. We ended up having that really awesome, crazy adventure, and that became more important than anything else that we were doing. And I after that trip, we started to design productions really and jobs around that.
It's the reason to do jobs in other cities is to visit that city and actually spend time in that city.
Yeah.
What's the point of traveling if you're just going to go for work, stay in your hotel room, go grab some McDonald's or something, and then head home? You're not seeing the city at all.
And then, you know, we're very at least I am very anti-tourist shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like most cities that you go to, it's like, oh, cool, there's a fucking museum and there's some goddamn fucking statue. I don't care. And you're waiting in line to see that shit. I don't fucking care. You know,
I'll see the statue. I want to have a beer too, though, but I'll see the statue.
fuck the statue. And so you're going to the spot to do that. So I find that people are the best way to find out how the culture is in that city. And I find that the best way to connect with people, doesn't matter what language you speak, doesn't matter like what color you are, everybody loves to eat. And food, common denominator, man. And as soon as you're sitting down, you could be speaking a completely different language. You start to smell that garlic, you start to smell that stuff happening, and everybody has that same sort of vibe where it's like, yes, I'm gonna eat, like it's time to fucking eat. And then if you're smart enough to go to a place like a bar or a spot where they're preparing that for you in front of you, then you're part of that whole process. And then you can be talking to bartenders, you can be talking to chefs. Like our favorite time to go out and do bar safaris are like Mondays and Tuesdays.
Right.
Because the best bars in the cities are dead. And you can actually go in and sit right there and talk to the chefs and talk to these people. And you learn a lot about the city. Like we just did this Sunday here in Vegas.
Yeah, first night here we went out and then met that bartender. He gave us a whole list of places that he likes to go to.
He's a
All local
metalhead.
spots.
Metalhead from Massachusetts.
Perfect.
And he gave us all these different spots, and it's really tough to do that here in Las Vegas because I feel like Vegas is now. Yeah, but it's also like, it's a fucking mall now. Like you get on the strip and it's like a giant CVS sign. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like the whole marketing campaign of like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Like, what do you mean? Like my receipts from the mall? You know what I mean? Like you're essentially.
Well, this whole town is like designed to distract you and take all your money. You know?
I
That's
wish.
why they have the big buildings.
Yeah, that's
So
why-
you don't.
So you don't leave the buildings. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool. Like, what do you think, Dave? Did you have fun?
Yeah, it was a lot different than I thought. You know, it's essentially just a bunch of bright lights and buildings surrounded by desert and mountains. It's like really feels kind of isolated, which is kind of not what I was expecting.
And you're a young buck here. Like the ladies like you here. You met a lady the
Yeah,
other
I
night.
had an interesting encounter my first night.
Wow.
And
tell.
Must be nice to be 21 and single. Jeez.
well, I was out trying to shoot some stuff, and I was walking back to the hotel through the casino, and I just got pulled over by this lady who was wearing practically nothing. And she was like, "Hey, my friend over there thinks you're kind of cute. You want to come back with us?" And I just, kept walking right back up to the hotel.
That's why we didn't hear from you until at the last minute this morning. Time travel, buddy. So yeah, I think that we're off on these tangents, but really, the adventure for the work, I think, outweighs the work these days for me, which is very strange. Like, I love the work that we do. I love creating stories. I love telling stories. But the actual process of making them are so much more important in my life now than the final products are. Because, as you look back on your life, and I was in a situation where I almost, shit the bed. You sort of look back on your life and you go, what have I done? Okay, well, I did this project, I did this project, I did that project. But then what the fuck does any of that mean? It doesn't mean anything. And so having this newfound respect for like all these little moments that we have and all these little steps really makes it really enjoyable. And it helps with I'm working for free for 2 weeks. I'm really not getting paid for all this stuff, but I'm getting paid in this sort of experience currency that I think is really important.
So it's interesting. Traveling as a creative definitely makes you wiser as a person. I mean, for the last 6 years, I've been circling the globe. I mean, I've done Slovakia, Austria, Paris, Japan, China, every corner of the United States. I mean, I'm like the Johnny Cash song. I've been everywhere, man. And the interesting thing is what you find is people are typically really cool everywhere you go. Even places where you think that people aren't going to be really cool. As long as you go there and realize that there are cultural differences and that's just the way they are. And maybe you're not perfect because you're from the United States. If you can glean things from that, it's going to bring more to your creativity.
I completely agree.
You can look at the world and say, oh, okay, I've been to France, I've been to Japan. I see the differences, and I'm going to take a piece of what I learned there and bring it here. It's interesting because I don't want to talk politics, but you look at the sort of like, the nationalism that's going on right now in our politics, where they're like, America only, blah, 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 blah. And you go, you guys are fucking morons. Like, get on a plane and, go to Budapest for a weekend and then come back and tell me how fucking great America is. Why don't you realize that the planet is great, the species is great, that we're all fucking great, that we're all interesting, and that, that somebody couldn't make the movie Blade Runner if they hadn't ever been to Japan. And you take that in and you realize, oh wow, there's so much growing that can be done as a creative by getting out and traveling. And the cool thing is that you travel for work, right? So you're out there, you're traveling to places to be creative, and while you're there, you don't even realize that you're becoming more creative. And you're becoming more worldly, and you're becoming more accepting, and it's cool. I mean, Rob and I were having a discussion this morning. We had crepes, right?
I can't tell you.
We're staying at the Paris. We're staying at the Paris. We're staying in Vegas at the Paris, and we're ordering crepes. And I was kind of saying like, yeah, it's cool. Like when you're in France, like they count differently with their fingers. Like 1 is with the thumb, and then 2 is like the second finger. It's like 1, 2, 3, but then when you go to Japan, people count with their fingers differently, where they start with an open hand, and it was like they put their thumb down for 1, they put their second finger down for 2. It's like people count differently with their hands, depending on where you're from in the world. And those are the little things you recognize when you go other places. If you're in mainland Europe and you get a bill for something, if it was €1 and they wrote it as like 1.00, they would use a comma instead of a period for the dot. And you would go, wait a second, that's different than the way we do it. And those are like microscopic little changes compared to the macro changes that you see when you go to like Shenzhen or Hong Kong, right? And it's cool to just take in all those little tiny changes and look at your world a little bit differently. And then you look at some of the things that you might take for granted every day in Watertown, Massachusetts, and realize that the things that you do at home are fucking absurd,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know, like you don't realize when you're cruising around, in lower Manhattan that, wearing a necktie is like the stupidest fucking thing a human being could do, right? But it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great points, man. And I think even if you look at it on a smaller scale, like if you're not someone that is fortunate enough to be traveling, for work, and if you're just looking at it in your hometown or in your city, like just being able to go out, like there are certain places that we can go. One of the things I love about Boston, before it starts to change too much, is that you can go sit at a bar like Charlie's Kitchen in Harvard Square and literally sit next to like a blue collar guy. You can sit next to like, the guy that like is, taking your garbage. You can sit next to like a professor, like a world renowned professor. And you can sit next to like a guy who owns a Fortune 500 company, and then a bunch of kids. And you can literally be at like a horseshoe bar and start a conversation if you're not afraid to, and if you're not distracted and stuck in your own little world with the phones and everything else. If you actually turn to the person that's sitting next to you and say to them, hey man, what's happening? It's that simple. And it's that first initial thing that so many people are afraid of. And we have such a society right now of people that are very socially awkward and very afraid to do that initial reaction. But the reward from that is amazing, because Tony wants to talk to me as much as I really want to talk to me most of the time. Sometimes you find that guy that's like, get the fuck out of here, dude. You know immediately who that is. But then you start this conversation. And if you're in that sort of horseshoe shape, then people are chiming in. Hey man, I do this and I do that. And then this guy that you've already prejudged, because we all do it, you walk into a place and that's how it's a safety mechanism. This person's this person's this person's that. The fun part is when you break that down and you actually check yourself and you go,
Right.
man, this guy, I had no fucking idea. And I always walk out of conversations like that dumbfounded because of my preconceived notions that I have in place for whatever reason. I find something really cool about people. And if we're storytellers, if that's what we do, and we're filmmakers and we're, podcasters, whatever, and we're telling stories, it's important for us to have those interactions, because then we actually represent our culture. We actually represent the people that are around us, and we're not just making it what we think it is, and we're putting it through our own filter.
Yep.
Does that make sense? So I think that's a really good point, Rod, and I think you can do that on a larger scale, and if you are lucky enough to be paid to travel and to be able to have handlers when you go to places and they can break the ice for you, which is really nice, which we get a lot. But even if you're in your own hometown and you're hanging out with a bunch of people, like, go out on your own. And it doesn't have to be, I'm talking about bars and beer and, maybe we have too many drinks all the time, but it can be as simple as, sitting in a park next to somebody and turning to them and going, hey, what's going on? Or if you're riding on the bus with somebody and you both are obviously bored, just turn to them and go, what's happening?
Yeah.
And
then there's the sort of the macro element of travel. Just a quick anecdote would be like, United States comes from Europe. Europe, you have sort of this sort of old-fashioned European chivalry, right? So we're more interested in personal space, and then you go to China, you land in Beijing, they put you on the train, and you get in the train, and the door is almost closing, and then the next airplane full of people shows up, they open the doors, and they literally fucking cram you in there. Like, cram you to the point where you're like, okay, can I keep breathing? Like, you can't, your arms are at your side. If you're standing in the middle of the car, your arms are at your side, and you're not gonna get your arm up to your face. So there's no point in trying to hold on to anything, because you're just gonna lean against the people next to you. And they literally cram like another 15 people into the car and you're like, oh, okay, like there's no personal space here because there's none of that European chivalry in their culture. And at first you go, well, geez, that's rude. And then you go, well, no, that's just the way they are, right? That's just the way they are. And you go, well, they got more people on the train than we did, so maybe it's more efficient. But you have to realize that there's this macro change in the culture.
Yeah.
You know, the first time you go to Asia and you see everybody chewing with their mouth open, you're like, well, wait a second, what the fuck? And then you realize that's how humans eat, unless they're told not to, right?
Yeah, right. Right.
You know?
Right.
And you go, huh, that's interesting. You can like breathe and eat at the same time through the same device, you know?
You know, Rod, you're so worldly. I had no idea.
I've been around the last couple of years, man. But there is the common denominator, and it's the Irish pub.
Oh.
So it doesn't matter where you go in the world,
Yeah.
you can find an Irish pub. I guarantee it, and I can prove it.
All right. I think we have to try this sometime.
This is true.
I think we're talking about like a European safari for bars at this point.
Yep. I mean, I found an Irish pub in Japan. I found an Irish pub in China. I found an Irish pub in Hong Kong. I found an Irish pub in Slovakia. I found Irish pubs in England.
No,
Right?
is the eating always good at all of them?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, food's great everywhere.
Well, at the Irish pubs, the food's always good.
The beer's always good.
Okay.
Beer's
Yeah, I
always
was gonna say.
I'll go that far.
You know,
So,
Irish food is like okay.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
beer's good.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, have you been anywhere really cool?
I go nowhere.
Oh, come on.
I am the yin to his yang.
Yeah.
I'm the exact opposite, and he's kind of trying to drag me out of that. And I'm the guy that's always been on the edge of the cliff, looking over, ready to jump, and haven't jumped yet. You know, and it looks scary down there.
What's keeping you from jumping?
Well, it's something when you're young to have these opportunities come at you, or you can run off and take some risks. But as you get older, you have more responsibilities. Those risks are harder to take because now it's not just your fat in the fire. You're taking everybody with you. So it can be scary. It can be very intimidating to go out there and just freelance and say, okay, I'm not going to worry about a 401k or benefits, healthcare, and especially with all the changes that could possibly come with healthcare. There's just a million things that you could worry about, but I don't know if you'll ever be happy if you don't take the risk, and that's the hard part is like you have to take the risk or you'll never live that life that you want to live.
That's the gamble, man. Like I deal with this with my brother all the time because my brother, I don't know if you've ever met my brother. My brother is a firefighter, civil servant.
I don't think I have.
He got out of high school. He knew, like, when he was a kid, he loved fire trucks, and he got right into it. And he's great. Like, he's American hero. Like, he ends up into my short films every once in a while, and I, like an asshole, cast him as the American hero. And I usually have him play like an ambulance or an EMT guy. But he's very driven, and he has a plan for retirement. He's got a plan for his future. He's got all that stuff, and that's what he does. And I'm the polar opposite, where I feel like I'm living my life now, and I'm sort of like, we'll see what the future provides. And like, it's with me, it's just sort of it's me just going, I'm not going to worry about it. And it's that point. And of course, you make a great point. It's very simple for me to do that because I had made a decision earlier in my career that I wasn't going to have kids for a long time. I wasn't going to get into that position until I felt like my career was going to be what paid me for all those things. So I've made a lot of sacrifices to be at this point as far as like my personal life goes. And it makes it easier for me to be able to take those risks. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. Like I've met people that, have come up that way, where they have that 9-to-5 career, like our buddy Rudy Hippolyte, who does all the documentary work. He works for Harvard, and he would hire me to do internal documentaries for years, and he's my oldest client. I mean, I've been working with him for like 16 years, and on his off time, he would plan these big documentaries. And he's had, his first one was on like ESPN Classic, or not ESPN, It was on Oprah Network. Magic Johnson was into it. It went into the festivals, really great. Got picked up by Snag Films, distributed. And then his new one that we shot on Inner City Gangs, which is really cool. We got to go and have an amazing adventure. That's a whole other podcast. Amazing adventure in our own city, in parts that, because of where I come from, I'm not allowed to go into. And attaching ourselves to this documentary gave us access to like beautiful areas of our city and really amazing people that, you know, race aside, I was able to get in there and be a part of it. But he does all that on his downtime, which
Yeah.
blows my fucking
And see, that's the
mind.
world that I'm in. I do stuff on my downtime, and it is, you know, a creative. You just have a drive where you have to do something. You know, you can spend 8 hours, your 8 hours of your day where you go to your job and you do your job, and you make it through that job, and that 8 hours feels like 12. And then in your downtime, if you're, you know, you do a filmmaking job, and you can spend 14 hours on that job and it feels like 3 hours because you love it. You know, you love every minute of it, you love the whole entire process of it, and it's just rewarding, you know. So it's hard to shake, you know. When you have a day job and you just have a passion to do, you know, other things, you know, get something out there. I don't know if it's, you know, some of an excuse to buy the toys and have the toys, you know.
Back to gear talk again.
No, not the gear talk, but it is, you know, there is some, you know, levels of accomplishment, if you will, to say that you've done something that was creative and it paid you. You know, you're able to pay yourself with that, and it justifies it. You know, it justifies your passion, and instead of going and sewing a button on a shirt, you know.
I think for Rob, 2017 is the year we push the boat off the dock. That's the goal.
I have high hopes for you, man.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
because it's a scary jump, but once you get accustomed to that rhythm, which is this, it's that wave rhythm.
Right.
And like in the beginning, you're really fucking stressed about it because you come out and it's low, and it's just low, and especially when you're young and you don't have that sort of history. So like if you make something that gives you a good jumping point, like if you create a project that gives you some attention and gives you some clout, because really in this business, like Rod was saying earlier, it's all about your product. Like we talk about these great adventures and we talk about the stuff that sort of gets us through this viciously competitive business. But at the end of the day, people go, well, send me your stuff. And you look at the stuff and you go, wow, okay, this guy's really great. Or I think I can be involved with this and this will be a lot of fun. So like if you can make a project that helps you go and do that jump and that gives you that clout, then just do it, man. Because then at that point, you can just ride. It's a gamble. It's always a fucking gamble, but at least you can ride the confidence that you have in saying, look, I know I can pull this shit off. And then the confidence in people looking at what your work is and them saying like, yeah, he's fucking good, you know?
I think another part of it is like deciding what you really want to do. You know, there's a one-man band mentality that is strong, you know, out there that it's like, okay, I'm going to write this project. I'm going to produce this project, I'm going to direct this project, and DP this project, and edit this project, and color this project. Right. You're gonna do everything, the whole thing.
I call those guys ninjas. They're the one-man army.
And there are some really great ninjas out there, you know, but, you know, are you really in love with the entire process of it? Or do you like, you know, shooting? Do you like directing? What is your thing? And what I've come to is that I like shooting. And I want to learn more about, you know, shooting. I'm constantly learning about shooting and how to make it better. And, you know, me particularly, I don't care to edit very much. You know,
most shooters that I know don't. Yeah.
But I didn't know that at first. You know, I had to figure that out, that I didn't, you know, enjoy the editing process. That's just something that I had to learn from editing, you know. And yeah, sure, I'll throw together something and, you know, I do enjoy some portions of editing, but I would much rather go on to the next shoot and stay in that world because that's where I like to, you know, that's where I like to be. And I think if you can realize where you want to be, you know, the sooner the better. If you can realize where you want to be, you know, and that's nothing against them. Your batteries are A little hot there.
Wow, our battery was smoking.
Were they touching each other?
Yes.
Oh my god, that's funny.
Sweet job, Tony.
So,
But
No, but I was just saying,
so Crisis Averted, like, if I can jump in there,
Sure.
it's fascinating that we are asking so much of the ninja today, because I remember having grown up in the movie industry and working on TV commercials. Okay, so you go to work on a show. Your job is either like you're the PA, or you're like a grip, or you're a director, and then like you could even subdivide that and go like, okay, you're either like the best boy grip, or you're like the key grip, or you're like one of the grips, right? So you're like the best boy grip, right? But you're not the key grip, and you're not the other guys. And like, you're a freelance guy, and that's what you are, day in and day out, you know, until eventually you get to be the key grip. But nobody's gonna be like, oh, well, dude, on the next job, can you be like the prop guy? You know? And that was like, you know, maybe 15, 20 years ago. And there was a structure to it, and there was sort of an apprenticeship aspect of it. Of, you know, you start as the PA, and you figure out, well, what does everybody do? And you figure out, okay, what am I interested in? Then maybe you slip into that role, and you grow within the department. And then, you know, there are guys who spent their whole lives as a grip. You know, there's famous grips, like Dickie Dietz, like, is a famous grip where, you know, he was like the guy. And people, you know, grips get a lot of stick, right? Everybody kind of jokes about being a grip, but you know what? There are grips that are like fucking legendary filmmakers who never aspired to be a director, and never saw an editing bay, probably never sat in on dailies in their lives. And that was their role within the filmmaking world.
Which is an admirable
It's
role.
a fucking incredible thing,
Yeah.
right? It's an incredible thing.
Because if you break it down, because we just say grip here, right?
Yeah.
But grip is a big deal.
it's a huge thing.
And if you have
Right.
a great, I mean, because at that point you're almost like an engineer,
Yeah.
where like you have to understand structure, you have to understand, like, you know, if I'm putting a dolly track down, you have to understand all of that
It's
stuff.
the most creative and diverse job in filmmaking,
Yeah.
for sure. Because it's like giving a kid a Lego set and saying to him, okay, I want the Millennium Falcon from scratch. Now, go. And those guys are amazing, and there is the apprenticeship aspect to it. Whereas in 2017, it's, I'm gonna go buy a Canon 5D, and guess what? I have all the tools, but nothing of the apprenticeship and the growth, you know? I was watching a show the other day that was produced by, there's a watch collecting website called Hodinkee, and they typically produce really great little pieces, like little video pieces on YouTube. They do this like little interview series. Well, they did like a live interview series, and it was two people, two interviewers, and then they set the interviewee subject between them. So the guy was answering questions, looking left, looking right, looking left, looking right, looking left, looking right. It was like, okay, wait. If there had been an apprenticeship aspect to this,
You would have learned.
you would have learned. You know, I did a job a few years back where I come from the gear side. Well, I work in the gear side, but I come from the production side. So I kind of like to sneak in once in a while and sort of do a job. Like, I went and helped my dad. He's a gaffer, and I went and like I was like his lighting guy for the day. Right?
That's cool though.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And I've gone and got jobs working with like high-end fashion photographers as like a camera assistant.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Just to like stay relevant, you know, and keep into it. And so I was working, and you know, here I am at my current position. I'm like the VP of marketing, but I'm working as a lighting guy on this job, and we're working on this little piece where it was a big creative agency, and they wanted to do like these on-screen testimonials, and they wanted to have it look like the Johnny Ive videos, like white background, you know, telling their little fucking story, blah blah blah, right?
I've done plenty. Yes.
So they hired some fucking schmuck who is like, I got the DSLR, I'm a director, we're gonna do a 2 camera, right? So we're gonna do a 2-camera shoot, and one is close and one's wide. You know, it's like this is like standard shit, right? So what do? They put the guy on the set, and they put one camera on one side of the guy's eye line and the other camera on the other side of the guy's eye line, right? So now every time you cut, it's like look left, look right, look left. You know, camera 1, camera 2, camera 1, camera 2. You know, you know what I mean? And so finally, I kind of was like, you know, like fucking move the camera, you know? Like put the camera over here. It's like, you're the director. Like you should have been through this a million times as like the lowly guy before somebody handed you the fucking keys, right?
Well, I mean, nowadays there isn't. I feel like as soon as productions started to have, I feel like as soon as the internet kicked in,
and digital filmmaking.
and digital filmmaking kicked in, and as soon as you had another broadcast outlet that they could say, well, this isn't broadcast, so this is no longer union. I no
Right.
longer have to deal with any of that stuff.
Right.
So then that became a whole marketplace within itself, and
Yeah.
without, I go both ways on the union. I think it's great. I think it's also a pain in the ass.
Right.
But without having that protection there, then you have a client base that is just forcing those prices as low as they possibly can go.
And the quality goes with it.
Right with it.
It's like a pyramid that's getting wider and lower,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
It used to be there was a pyramid, like it used to be that if you wanted to shoot a commercial, to get your hands on, let's say, an Arri 435 film camera, to go way back, you were gonna have to rent that sucker. You're gonna have to rent a dolly. You're gonna have a crew. To learn how to do that, you were gonna be a PA who like stole the fucking camera truck for the weekend,
Yeah.
right? You're like, oh, I'm gonna pick it up on Saturday, and all Sunday
You're just fucking.
you were fucking shooting like crazy, and then nobody knew it. And then Monday came, and you're like, ding, like I made a little spec piece, right? Like you had to really fucking try.
Yeah.
Now, you could go shoot for under $1,000, right? Under $1,000, you could like talk your mom into buying you a little shitty DSLR that shoots 1080p, and you could make a supposedly cinematic piece. But I think craft is extremely important. And craft comes from, not just from, you don't have to take everything in like a pedantic fashion and learn from a school. You could be the autodidact who teaches yourself, but you have to have gone through it. Mm-hmm. There has to be time spent on the rungs of the ladder before you get to the top.
Well, and I don't want us to, because we have a lot of listeners that are the one-man band show, and I don't want us to feel like we're telling them that, you guys aren't worth it. It's
Right.
just, I think for the learning process in general, I think that if you're teaching yourself about technology and you're like, look, I have to stay up to date on the latest camera, I got to stay up to date on the latest software, great. And then you have to teach yourself like creatively, like how do I compose my shots? How do I do this? Fill some of your time with just going and working on these larger structured things.
Don't be such an egotist that you say to yourself, well, I'm my own director.
Yeah.
You know what? Go out and see if you could get a job as a set dresser or a grip or a lighting technician. You know?
Yeah, and to cross that line, I
Even
think
an
you have
assistant cameraman.
like to cross that line of professionalism, you have to know how the system works, and you have to fit into that system. I've seen guys that can do great music videos, but they can't do any corporate work. They just suck at it, or vice versa.
Yeah.
It's really, you have to know your role.
And this is something that I think we'll get into on further podcasts. But I really think that in our business, time and experience really saves your ass. And I think that there's everything in theory, and you go out into that theory, but you're not in a vacuum. It's not like you're, painting a picture where you go, okay, so if I mix these colors, then these colors are gonna make that colors. If I buy this brush, and then I use this brush in this painting, and then boom, I got this thing. Your brushes and your paints all have their own personalities. They all have their own dramas. They all have all their own stuff. And so you're in this sort of like circling hurricane of random things that are gonna fucking happen to you. And I think the only way you can start to grasp how to control these things, especially as a director, is actually see someone else do it. And honestly, see someone else fucking fail at it.
Yeah.
Like you actually have to be there when someone is doing a bad job. And then if you're low enough and you're in that PA position where if you're smart, you're going around, you're making friends with everybody in all the different departments, and you're hanging out with those guys, you can see how a bad decision at the top just sort of filters down and how it trickles and how it does all this stuff. And if you're really smart, you can start to see how timing works. And you can see like, okay, so that asshole DP, instead of planning out his day and saying, hey, we're going to shoot everything in this direction, they're flopping sides all day. And so as they're flopping sides all day, how long does it take that grip team to take two 12Ks and move it to the other side?
Right.
And so then you start doing that math and you
that
start
time,
seeing
yeah.
that stuff so that when you're in that position and you go, okay, A, I should probably plan this all out right. But B, if I'm fucked and like a client asks me to go do this thing, I know that that's going to take like 45 minutes. So do I scrap the shot? Do I keep the shot? Like, what's my day plan like? What's all my stuff like? And that's the kind of stuff that, I mean, you've been in that position for years, Tone, like being that fly on the wall. And now, I mean, you want to talk about one-man band stuff. Tony's a great shooter at this point because you've spent years working with me as a shooter. You're mostly in post now, but you know how to cut, you know how to do edit. Like, honestly, Dave, if you want to get into the business, you talk to Tone because you've done almost every position that you possibly can on films, yeah?
Yeah, I've always just wanted to be, especially when I was starting out, you want to be that guy that's like that set of hands that can handle anything. Whether I'm helping somebody swap batteries in a camera, or I'm helping move C-stands, or I'm actually helping set up like silks and flags, or like running, cable. Like, you kind of learn how to do all that stuff. And then now it is mostly post for me.
Yeah.
Helping Ian with the assistant edit work, some cutting too, and then.
Why'd you land on post?
I like color. I really enjoy grading. That's like my favorite thing. And like now it's weird because like the mysticism behind color grading is like out the window. It's gone. Everybody spends time doing it because it's so distilled, but you still have to learn to be very good at it to be on the top of that chain. And there's a lot of people that they can daylight balance. They can get an image to look correct, but they don't know how to grade. And I'm kind of learning that process of coming up with. There's no such thing as like a signature look for a grader, but like there's like a signature set of steps that you have to get a look. You're kind of trying to like figure out what that is with whatever software you're using.
Do you consider like the camera work that you've done? Does that help you in post, knowing how to shoot, or
for sure,
that definitely plays a role in how you grade?
Yeah, that definitely does help. Yeah, because I know how the end image is supposed to look. Like I know the difference between exposures now, which is probably the most important thing that I've learned as a colorist now. But yeah, that's helped a lot. And actually being working as an assistant editor has helped a lot because I know how to set up projects, any kind of project. I know how different file types work. I know the whole logging process and dealing with that data has definitely helped a lot more in learning to be a colorist. Because working in Resolve, it used to be such a pain in the ass to set up a project. It's become more streamlined now. It used to be an absolute nightmare. You have to open up the project, set the project, set your drives, close the project, reopen the project, and start your work, and then import everything in. But like now, you can just start going, and I think that's because Resolve is trying to get more into like being an editor,
Right.
which is weird. It works, but it's such a weird concept. But I mean,
Right.
And I think like this new one this year, like they're integrating more audio into it, so now it's like you can bounce your audio out straight to Pro Tools and like.
But they're doing that whole one-man band shit. Like even the manufacturers are trying to like
one-man band thing, yeah.
do that one-man band thing, and then from a filmmaker standpoint, okay, look, if you're gonna do a small little piece, if you're gonna do a piece with your friends, or if you're gonna do like a real run and gun kind of thing, then one-man band is great. And I've done plenty of that stuff, and I've made my career on doing a lot of that stuff. But then as you hit a ceiling where you go, okay, but I want to have some like control, and I want to have some like really thought out craft in my work. And then what you find is that you start to rely back on that 100-year, 150-year system that is in place where it's like block, light, shoot, and like all that stuff that is there for a reason. And even in post-production, all these steps are there for a reason. And what ultimately you're trying to do is create a machine, like a perfectly wound clock that is waiting on the go from whoever has the creative idea to begin with. And that creative idea obviously is controlled by the amount of funds that are coming at it. That creative idea is controlled by the amount of resources and really the creative talent of that person. The rest of this stuff should just be able to run with it, you know? And you're seeing that shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. Like that's the Hollywood system. And sure, there's a lot of like bloatedness and a lot of slowing down and a lot of that stuff that happens in there. But I can't make the kind of movies that I want to make doing it one-man band.
I think the benefit of the one-man band, though, is just to teach yourself. I mean, when you're out there and you're doing the one-man band thing, you are learning every, aspect of it. And what I take away from running around and doing the one-man band thing is, okay, now when I shoot, I'm familiar with post.
Yeah.
So, I can talk to a colorist and, speak their language. Even if that's not something that I particularly want to do, I need to be on the same page, because if I'm not on the same page with my colorist, my image is on the line.
Yeah.
Right, right.
And they're not going to blame him; they're going to blame me.
But I completely understand that, and I think there's a difference between making sure that you familiarize yourself with that and you put yourself through that process, and then there's that difference between categorizing yourself and promoting yourself and saying that this is all I do.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to hire me, I shoot and I do this. And a majority of the time, whenever I encounter people that do that, they're folks that are desperate for all that loot. So it usually comes down to like, what's the budget overall?
Yeah.
Oh, you've got, oh, cool. So this has got like a $50,000 budget for this whole thing. Oh shit. Well, I can edit, I can shoot, I can do this, I can do all that stuff. Okay. I just need to hire a sound mixer. I need to hire this guy. So, okay. So it's going to cost me $3,000. Okay, great. Okay, yeah, no, I got it. I got it all under
But
control.
you
I got it
learn
all
something
great.
through all that. Like the benefit of putting yourself in that position, if there is only one benefit, is that you learn that you can't skimp on any of those steps along the way. He's like, you're like, yeah, okay, cool. I know how to run sound. I can shoot. I'll be the director. I can edit and color. Cool. I can do all that shit. And then you start doing it, and like you're like, well, I mean, maybe I don't have to log all this footage. I'll just start cutting. Or like maybe I don't have to slate every take because I know what I'm doing, and then like the next step is fucked up because you messed up that you took a shortcut.
Yeah, that's a good point, Toad.
But you don't learn that until you go, I can do all these things, and you're trying to juggle, and you're like, no, I don't know how to juggle.
At that point, you're like, okay, clone me, like
Yeah,
please,
exactly.
I need like 6 more, and then you go through that process that I went through when we started to work together. Where I'm like, okay, great, but now I need people to work for me, and then I have to teach folks that
At the same time.
at the same
basically.
time.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult thing if you're outside the system and you're a one-man band, and then you're even trying to make it legitimate. The teaching process, it all takes fucking time.
Yeah.
And I think that there is no such thing as a shortcut. I think there are some people that are lucky and they fall into like lottery wins and they get their access, but I mean, ultimately, they have skipped all this really great development time, which, I'm on the verge of 12 Cam potentially becoming a big film right now. And I think it's the first time, if it was like 6 years ago, I would have been scared out of my mind.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's the first time in my career that I'm like, I got it. Like I know enough about this stuff. I'm not a master, but
You've
I know
learned
enough about
You've
it.
learned enough through, because for a while you were kind of doing like the one man band thing. I mean, you were a DP director,
Yep.
and you used to edit your own things and you color your own work. And I think that by taking like a step back and letting other people fill those roles, your ability as a storyteller kind of like got better. Because you know how to shoot a story, you know how a story should look and how it should be cut together. But when you're so focused on being a one-man band and you're so overloaded with all that shit, I don't think that your storytelling part of your brain is working as hard as the rest of your brain working, like learning how all the gear works, how it all works together, contacting vendors, making sure you have everything in on time.
Yeah.
When you can't do all those there's not everybody's like a Robert Rodriguez where And you have your own setup and you do everything, and you can afford the time to come up with the story and develop the story, then shoot the story, then cut the story, then color the story, then score the story.
But also, I love Rodriguez,
Yeah.
but you also see the limit
Of that, yeah.
of that with his work. And I think his work is fantastic, but if you're trying to get, like, I want to be Ridley Scott level. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be, David Fincher level. And that isn't a one-man band game.
They don't do everything, yeah.
Well, there's this paradoxical thing you were talking about, cloning yourself. So in reality, here's the question. Here's the burning question for you, Mike.
Yeah.
You wake up tomorrow, you can clone. So the question is, you get on a set tomorrow morning. Do you clone 10 Mike Peccies? And you say, okay, Mike Pecci number 2, you're going to go do lighting. Mike Pecci number 3, you're going to go do sound. Mike Pecci number 4, you're going to go do set dressing and production design. Or do you wake up tomorrow morning and you say, I'm not going to clone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create like Mike Pecci number 2, and all he is the HR guy who's going to go out and source me the talent to find people who are fucking incredible at what they do, even if they're different than you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the paradoxical thing is, do you clone yourself because you know that the clone of you can do it the way you want? Or do you go out and find those people
Well, I mean, honestly, dude,
who aren't clones of you, but maybe are specialists? That's right. So there's the burning question.
well,
right?
I mean, honestly, my answer to that question would be, I would probably clone Tone. I'd clone. No, seriously, and I don't mean that in like, I mean other than sleeping together kind of stuff. Like it would be because you have gone through the training sessions on all these different roles for me.
Yeah.
And so, like training Dave, like it's really, you just want that. You want to have, at least in your key help positions,
Right.
because you're always going to be collaborating with like top of the line DPs and top of the line folks, and you're going to be casting those people and bringing those folks in. But when it comes to the day to day,
It's also important to have people around who know how you operate.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is, you did clone yourself, and what you did is you've worked with Tony so long that now he represents.
Well, yeah, I
he
made
represents
like
you.
a shorter,
Right.
like fatter
Stockier,
version.
yeah.
Very Freudian. He's sort of the Ron Jeremy version of you, right? Shouldn't be a porn star, but he is.
He is anyway.
Yeah,
It's there. Everyone likes it.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've hit our point for this episode. Like, I really appreciate this conversation. Has gone a lot of really good spots, and it's a lot of fun. I'm really happy to have met you,
Likewise.
and I'm pumped that we were able to hook up. This was completely unplanned.
I always love reconnecting with the team.
Yeah, and then Dave, I'm happy that you had an experience with a street hooker here in Vegas. And then Tony, I'm happy that you're finally on the show with us.
Yeah. No, it's good. Let's get back out to NAB, stare at a bunch of gear.
Yeah, and tonight we have a list of local bars. So if you guys want to go around with us after we finish everything tonight,
Awesome.
yeah, we'll do that. All right, thank you everybody for listening.
All right.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of In Love with the Process. We couldn't have done it without the help of our sponsors, and we have a few new ones this month that I'm excited to tell you about. First, Puget Systems. Are you a video editor, sound composer, or graphic artist looking to upgrade your system to something bigger and better? Not finding the options you need from a Mac? Then make the switch to a PC and never look back. I did years ago and have been editing everything I do on my Genesis 2 systems from Puget. Go to PugetSystems.com and have the perfect system built for your needs at a price that doesn't put you out of business. They make it really easy to browse for the right hardware by selecting what software you use. Go over to PugetSystems.com and tell them that Mike Pecci sent you. Azo monitors. So you're color grading your latest video, and when you upload it online, the colors look completely different. Or when you watch it on TV at home, it looks way too dark. That's because you need a color-calibrated monitor. Azo makes these self-calibrating monitors that give you peace of mind knowing that when you slightly shift a hue or bring down the brightness, that the people at home will see it the way that you want it. I use a CG277 self-calibrating monitor for every project I color grade. And honestly, I couldn't live without it. Go to azo.com to learn more. One of our new sponsors this month are our good buddies over at Rule Boston Camera. They are the best camera rental place in New England and my favorite place to go in Boston to test new gear. As a freelancer, I had to learn how to keep my overhead costs low. That means renting most of my equipment. This allows me to offer the latest and greatest new camera gear to my clients, fully equipped with the latest upgrades and tweaks. So if you're in Boston and looking to rent gear, go to rule.com. iCan. Battery-powered LED lights, wireless video systems, camera support, stabilizers, and more. These guys do it all. I've been using their Raiden series and their Featherweight series LED lights for years now. I mean, I use it for every documentary I do. I've used it in every music video I've done. They're battery-powered, they're lightweight, and I can set them up wherever I want. Go through their website and check out a lot of their new toys. And honestly, if you're a fan of the show and you're looking to buy any of this gear, drop me an email and I can hook you up with some really sweet deals. Go to iCan.com and browse around and try not to get too excited, you nerds. And finally, McFarland and Pesci. Together, myself, Tony, and director Ian McFarland have been creating films, music videos, and commercials for over 10 years. Want to see the cool stuff that we've been working on lately? Go to McFarlandandPesci.com. And honestly, guys, I really want to thank you so much for listening, and I want to apologize for how long it has taken for these episodes to come out. The past 2 months have been insane for us, and I have a lot of really exciting news coming out in the next couple months that I am just chomping at the bit to share with you. So please continue to listen. Within the next few weeks, we should have the second part of our Vegas trip ready to rock. I'll be hanging out with the boys from Puget, and we're talking about the Mac to PC switch. We're also getting into sponsorships a bit more, and then we talk about food and barbecue because those guys are a bunch of food nerds just like me. So definitely subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. We're on iTunes, we're on SoundCloud, and we're also on YouTube. So it is in love with the process. And thank you so much. I'm Mike Pecci, and I will see you next episode.